All right, Alexander, let's talk a little bit more about Brexit, the Brexit deal, but let's talk about Macron and his involvement in the Brexit deal and what's happening with Macron in France now that we've got a Brexit treaty, maybe not deal, just say treaty, I guess. How did Macron handle things and what's going on with France now post-Brexit?
Can I just say it will be a treaty? It has to be ratified both by the British Parliament and by the parliaments of the EU member states and by the European Parliament. So it will be it will be an international treaty having the force of international law. So we can talk about this deal being actually a treaty. But let's come to Monsieur Macron, because what happened was that during the EU negotiations, Macron managed to insert himself into those negotiations, and he played an extraordinarily hard line in them. I mean, he was one of the most outspoken EU leaders in taking the strongest possible line with the British. He took a very strong line over the fisheries issue, where on balance, I think he got most of what he said he wanted. But many people, both in Britain and in the EU, and especially the Germans, felt that one of the reasons Macron was taking this extremely hard line with the British, and not just on fisheries, was that he basically wanted to torpedo the whole negotiation and to force the British into a no-deal outcome. And one of the things that he did, which attracted a lot of anger in Britain, and which wasn't particularly well covered, I think, in the international media, is that when the new variant of the thing appeared, he closed the Channel ports, causing massive tailbacks of lorries and trucks and commercial vehicles that were taking goods from Britain to the continent, and on the other side in France too, that were bringing goods from France to Britain. And this happened at an absolutely critical moment during the negotiations. Other EU countries stopped air flights, but he blocked all commercial traffic. And this is widely assumed within Britain to be yet another attempt by Macron to try to force the British into some kind of no-deal outcome. In other words, to put pressure on them, to say to them, we're ready for a no deal, and we're going to take the hardest possible line with you. And that's why he closed the ports. And what seems to have happened, in fact, is that the Germans leaned on him and the Commission leaned on him, and he had to open up the ports after basically about 48 hours. So it didn't actually last that long. And in the end, he had to agree to a deal, which is very much along the lines of what the British wanted. The British and the Germans wanted. So Macron took a very hard line. He's made it very clear for a very long time that he wanted the British completely out of the European Union. He doesn't really want them involved in British EU affairs at all. He's almost, if you like, got a community of interest with the hardest line Brexiters. But in the end, the Merkel and the EU pulled the rug from underneath him, and he's ended up looking rather foolish. And I gather that there's been mounting complaints against him within France, again, for taking a very hard line, which in the end, all it managed was to annoy the Germans, annoy the Commission, and leave France isolated, without Macron himself being prepared to go all the way and impose the kind of sanctions that he wanted. So he came out looking devious and weak at the same time, instead of tough and strong, which is what he wanted to do. Very like Macron.
Yeah, but why the people aren't? The people don't care in France right now. I mean, they have other things on their mind. You're talking about the French aristocracy, the business class. Who cares Were people that invested in Brexit in France? Actual people?
I think more than one might think. No, I think if Macron had played this differently, I think if Macron had tried to be accommodating with the British, as he was, by the way, last year when he negotiated with the withdrawal agreement, I think it would have gone okay for him. But the point to understand, because I don't think people would have been so vastly interested in the topic. But the thing to understand is that this has been a bad year for Macron. Things have gone badly wrong for him on many fronts economically. And I think for many people in France, this was another blow. This is another sense that they have a president who consistently overplays and overpromises. And I gather there has been some anger and quite a lot of criticism, and I understand that he has been put on the defensive and is trying to justify the positions he took. In my experience, French people, even if they're not particularly interested in the detail of a problem, do not want to see France appearing isolated and overruled. They have a very strong feeling that France ultimately is a country that should play a strong role. And Macron this year has been trying to play the sovereigntist a little, even though we all know that he's deep down very much the integrationist, globalist. He didn't convince the sovereigntists. On the contrary, he came out looking weak. And to some extent, he annoyed the integrationists and the globalists too. I think he's going to have a very difficult election coming up soon, and I wouldn't be surprised if he turns out to be a one-term president.
All right. So his problem is essentially with Merkel.
His problem is
it's not with Johnson. It's with Merkel.
No, it's got nothing.
And when it came to at least like topics as the East Med, I mean, he did take the strong with Turkey. At least he took the strongest position you could possibly take.
Yes, only to be overruled by Merkel within the European Union. He wanted much harder sanctions on Turkey, and Merkel blocked him. So that's the problem he always faces. At the end of the day, he's able to talk, but he's never prepared to go to the full lengths of imposing vetoes. If we go back to the person he's been invoking a lot recently, who is General de Gaulle, de Gaulle back in the 60s was not afraid to actually impose vetoes. He wasn't afraid to be isolated. He was prepared to take a strong line, backing his words with action. Macron never does that. So in the end, he never looks as strong as he wants to appear. And he upsets, as I said, the nationalists in France. Let's call them nationalists because that's what they are, the patriots. But he is never, and at the same time, he upsets the integrationists who want him to play basically to Merkel's tune. So he manages to lose with both because he's not strong enough and purposeful enough in himself to see what he wants through.
Right. He has a Merkel problem. Macron has a Merkel problem. He has a Macron problem as well because he always seems to screw up, but he just can't take on Merkel.
Well, no, he can't. Though I think actually, and this is where I think France, the French people need to understand this. Without France, the EU fails. I mean, you cannot have an EU without France. And that ought to, in theory, give a French president and a French government and France enormous leverage. It ought to be able to do what de Gaulle did back in the 60s, which is use his veto in an intelligent and forceful way and force a decision and force the EU and the Germans to take France seriously. Macron talks as if he's prepared to do that, but he never does it. He didn't do it over Brexit. He didn't do it over Turkey either. He's never prepared to do it. And the result is that in the end, he always ends up looking weak. I think he's going to go the way of Sarkozy and of Francois Hollande, both one-term presidents who preceded him, people who ultimately lost support in France because in the end, they were trapped within whatever policy the Germans wanted. They talked the talk, they were never prepared to break with Merkel, and Macron has taken that even further.
All right, we will leave it there. Alexander Merkers, thank you very much. Guys, hit that like. Do us a big favor, just hit that like. If you like this video, hit that subscribe as well. Look for us on BitChute and Rumble and Odyssey. We are on those platforms, so check us out there. Subscribe to us on those platforms. Go to our Discord server and go to the Duran shop and pick up some merchandise.
Indeed, our tremendous merchandise. We've been talking a bit about Brexit. We've got our wonderful magic mugs, this one with the flag of the UK. But we've also got, as you can see, amazing sweatshirts like the one I'm wearing now, T-shirts, the best T-shirts anywhere, long-sleeved and short-sleeved. And we've got hats and hoodies and stickers, and you can find all these great things in our shop, and you support the Duran by coming to our shop, and you can support us also, as Alex said, by finding us on our other platforms, and please support us also through Subscribestar and PayPal and Patreon, because we depend on you for your support so that we can continue to provide with the kind of analysis we provide on our programs. And please also join us in our next program.
All right. Take care, everybody.